Hi, my name is Anne Goodall and I have been a therapist now for over 10 years. I've worked with depression, I've worked with suicidal ideation, I've worked with addictions, but predominantly in that 10 years, I have worked with anxiety. So I have learned some really important things from working with people over these years in relation to anxiety. And that is that pretty much without exception, when somebody comes and I do an initial consultation, people have either had one of three things. I have never had a client who hasn't had one of these three as an adult happen in their childhood. One is the fact that they have had an anxious parent. So again, probably 80-90% of times when I ask, was one of your parents anxious? Typically answer is yes, mum was or dad was. Okay. So it doesn't mean that just because you have an anxious parent and you've got the genes for it, we know from scientific literature that it's not just genes, it's genes and environment. But typically speaking, there is an anxious parent. The second thing that brings on anxiety is something has happened to somebody. So maybe you were brought up in a family where it wasn't anxious, but something happened. So that could be somebody gets locked into a shed, or somebody gets, something happens basically. It could be bullying in school, it could be any number of things. But as a kid, you're quite, happy-go-lucky, no big deal, and then something happens, and then suddenly it's like something clicks in your brain. Or the third reason, which happens, is if you have a child who's been brought up in a family where one of the parents has got anger issues. So in other words, what happens is the kid grows up waiting and wondering to know when everything is going to kick off. It's almost like they grow up with that kind of like, we got to be quiet, or we got to be careful because we don't know when mum or dad is actually going to lose their temper. Or most often, there's a combination of those three. But what I would like to really share with you is that you can actually, like, anxiety is something that actually can be, I hate saying get rid of, because does that mean that you're never going to worry again in your life? Of course not. But it can be something that is massively, massively, massively reduced. And to do that, you really need to understand that anxiety comes from your unconscious mind. The programs that you run are at the level of the unconscious. That's why over the years, most people who come to me, they've already been in counseling, they've already been in other forms of talk therapy. But the reality is they're working with their conscious mind, and that is not where anxiety actually resides. So I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be really specializing in working with parents and helping parents to prevent a lot of the anxiety that potentially can happen down the road with their children, because you have so much influence over your child, especially between the age of 0 to 7/0 to 9. So it's not just about whatever genes, it's the environment that your child lives in. So I'm really happy to work with you if you wish, whether it's on an individual basis or most likely in a group basis, so I can help you mitigate your own anxiety and give you the tools to prevent your child or children having to experience the same things that you do. So if that sounds like something you want, go down below and click on the link. I will see you soon. Thank you for watching.